Hello, this is Kimmie Rhodes with John Broughton. You're listening to Retrospectives on 3SER KC Radio.
Put your arms around me, listen to my heartbeat now.
Sure. I believe you began singing at a very young age, and there was a gospel trio in your family.
Yes, my brother and my dad and I.
Fantastic. And how long did that go for?
Oh, when you're 6 years old, it's hard to remember these things, but I don't know, a few years maybe.
Was it that time that gave you the desire to be a performer?
Actually the thing is I didn't actually, a funny thing is I didn't aspire to be a performer because I already was one.
Yeah.
So it was just something I did. And it wasn't until years later that what I wanted to be when I was a kid, everybody'd say, what do you want to be when you grow up? I wanted to be a florist. So that's what I did. I grew up and I became a florist. And I did that for a lot of years. But what I did was I lived on a farm up in North Texas, a family farm, and I, of course, naturally went back to music again. And I started learning to play guitar, and I really didn't even realize what I was doing. I thought I was writing poetry, but it turned out I was writing songs. And it just sort of sneaked up on me, and then in 1979, I had a handful of songs, and a mutual friend, T.J. McFarland, I met, who lived here in Austin, introduced me to Joe Gracie and helped me get started, and I came to town and started making records in 79 here in Austin, and eventually moved here.
So the music that you were listening to when you were growing up, can you link them together? Is there a universal quality in some of the artists that you were admiring when you were growing up?
There actually, interestingly, there sort of is, because I guess you have these definitive moments in your life. When I got my first, I can't remember what birthday it was, but when Meet the Beatles came out,
mm-hmm.
My mother gave me an album of Meet the Beatles for my birthday, but she also, in the same package, gave me a copy of My Fair Lady. And it's funny, I think back about that. At that moment, I had not a lot of interest in My Fair Lady, but I did listen to it. I had been listening to show tunes and all that, But when the Beatles came out, all that kind of fell by the wayside. But,
yeah.
Actually, if you think about it, the Beatles music, especially as it progressed, when they quit trying to be Chuck Berry and Buddy Holly and became who they really were, kind of naturally grew into themselves as artists. A lot of the music that they did was very much like, some of those bigger songs like the show tunes and things are.
Yeah.
And so I think there is a universal quality. I think it's called melody.
Mm-hmm.
And now, that's a large part of what I do as an artist is I'm a playwright and I do musicals. And so that whole thing has come back around again. And I can't say that I draw any more inspiration from the show tunes I listened to as a child than I do from the Beatles music I listened to as I was growing up.
What about songwriting? When did that start to appear for you?
Oh, I'd say I started actually writing. My mom remembers me just as a kid. She said I always made up songs and sang them and stuff. But actually, I think seriously, it was in 79 when I had my first little group of songs that I decided to make records and record would be when I would think, my real career as a songwriter began.
How influential was your move to Austin in being responsible for the type of music that you make now? Do you think you'd still be writing the same songs if you hadn't moved there?
Well, actually, I do, because I think when I moved to Austin, I became aware a little bit more of the trend that was going on then in Austin, which was sort of a move towards, I think, more Americana music.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that at that point, maybe the music I started making and the direction I went had a lot to do with just the Austin scene and what was going on and what everybody wanted to do and, just what was happening.
Yeah.
But as time went by, I think that sort of helped me grow in the direction of being an Americana artist. But I think, time tells a lot, and as time went by, I pretty much just naturally did, I guess what I just said the Beatles did. I kind of grew into my own. I quit trying to be something and just started being me. And a very fortunate thing happened, which was I had a really good relationship with a publisher for about 8 years, and not just a publisher in Nashville, but there aren't really publishers much in Austin that you can sign with. So I signed with a publisher in Nashville, but more importantly, out of LA. And so I spent time in New York and in California and Nashville, being able to write not just songs for records and not just songs for myself, but it also gave me the opportunity to write songs for movies and different things. And I met Joe Sears and started writing songs for plays. And I think it was all, the whole of that experience was very liberating in that I didn't feel that I had to be Kimmie Rhodes, the Americana artist that makes Americana records. I think it made me where I thought of myself as someone who could write a lot of different kinds of music and write whatever I felt like writing and for whatever I felt like writing for.
Is it would you call it a competitive music scene there in Austin, or is there a real sense of community amongst all the artists there?
Well, I think that, for one thing, competition can be viewed two different ways. It can be viewed as a good thing or a bad thing.
Yeah.
If you think of it's the same as competition in sports. I mean, anybody who tells you that they're not thinking, well, I did something better than that, or I could have done something as good as that, is probably not, if they tell you they're not doing that, they're probably not telling you the truth. Because it just by nature, I think human beings are competitive in every workplace.
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily the better part of ourselves, but it's not necessarily a bad thing either because it causes you to rise to the occasion.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that same competition, not just in Austin, but also in Nashville, I've seen it a lot too. It's we're very, because we all understand that it's not easy and what you actually strain and go through. I think there's a real appreciation for somebody who did something good.
Mm-hmm.
And because and not just an appreciation, but a happiness for the person if they ring that bell,
Yeah, yeah.
And if they actually can get all those things to come together in their psyche and their heart and their mind and on the paper and in the studio and bring all those things together and actually excel at something. I think people there's a real appreciation in human beings for other people who are able to do the thing you're trying to do, and an inspiration. And so I think that all the artistic communities I've been in, not just Austin, are that way. I mean, there's some competition. I mean, I have friends, that will go, that makes me so mad, that makes me so jealous. It's great. You know what I mean? So it's not just one feeling. It's all combined, but I think it causes music to be a lot better, and it also causes some fast friendships. When people are supportive of you and happy for you when something good happens for you, I think you really appreciate it, and you know that those are the people who are your friends. And the cads are few and far between, but they happen, but they're not worth mentioning.
Someone who was a great support to you was Willie Nelson.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, must have been a great boost to your confidence and your career at the time you came in contact with him. How did all that happen?
Well, when you admire someone that much and what they do, it really does make you, I guess it was just confirmation, especially at the time, because I was still sort of in the stages of making my first records and writing my first songs, and maybe was even a little insecure about some of them, if they were really good or how they were going to work out, and because it's not just what you think. If you're making records, it's what other people think too. And,
yeah.
And so to have the endorsement of Willie Nelson and Waylon Jennings and some of the people that came along who supported me and liked my songs, it helped me a lot just to feel better about what I was doing and to know I was on the right track.
Can you pinpoint a time when you felt within yourself that you were starting to gain self-confidence in yourself as a songwriter?
Oh, I think probably there were when people started to respond to the songs, you know, not just sort of, but go, wow, that's really good. You know, I mean, my first song, one of my first songs that got a lot of good recognition, and actually I had some success with, was a song called "I Just Drove By."
Mm-hmm.
And I've kind of got to go to a new level on that song. I mean, just on the power of that song. So that song was definitely a definitive moment in my career. It was the first real money I made as a writer, and you know, Willie loved the song, and he recorded it, and a song called "Just One Love," and some of those songs. And then after that period, you know, I think that's when I kind of found my feet, and you know, went from there.
You had the pleasure in your early days of recording at the legendary Sun Studios.
Yeah, yes, I did.
Yeah.
Actually, we were in Nashville. We were visiting a friend, Jack Clement, who was the engineer there when Jerry Lee and Carl Perkins and I think Elvis was just out the door when we call him Cowboy Clement, the kind of a legendary record producer, now produced Johnny Cash and Waylon and a bunch of people. But we were in Nashville visiting him, and he had just worked on a movie, Rattle and Hum, because Sun Studios with U2.
That's right.
Because Sun Studios had just reopened, and he was telling us all about it, and so we decided to swing off the freeway and down by Sun Studios on the way home, driving home to Texas from Nashville, and we stopped in the studio, and a tour was just beginning, and it never occurred to me that I would make a record there, and we took the tour, and of course we were just, you know, we were overqualified for the Sun Studio tour, but we were walking around. When I say we, I mean Joe Gracie and me, and we were walking around the studio clapping our hands and checking the acoustics and things. And at that point, I mean, what was going on with me, that was the point in time where technology had really taken a jump, way before the digital thing came along. But, you know, analog studios had become, you know, pretty sophisticated, and all this overdubbing was going on, and so much of the power had left the artist and gone to the engineer. And of course, engineers were loving that, and they were manipulating everything, and pretty soon everybody was in separate rooms. They all had headphones on, and I just found that to be a way of recording that I hated and I've never liked. And so I thought, you know, I mean, just, I guess it was just that 6-year-old kid from the gospel trio started going, you know, if I was in here, there's very little manipulation that could go on. And the room just felt magic, and I thought, I wonder if we come here, if the magic would happen. And so, you know, this is all going through my mind. I'm not even listening to the tour, and the guy says, any questions? And I raised my hand and said, yes, what are your rates? And so we were back there within a few weeks with a part Nashville, part Texas band, and we recorded part of a record there. The rest of it was recorded in Nashville and Austin, and Cowboy Clement came along and played rhythm guitar and brought his engineer with him, David Ferguson, and Joe Ely came and did a duet with me on a song, and it about halfway through the first day, it really was magic. And I really was glad. The drummer yelled a little bit because I think it's a little harder for them without headphones, so we rigged him up with some headphones, and then we just made music. And it was just refreshing to be back in that situation again, and that's why I went to Sun Studios.
So the building itself and the room itself still has that feeling of that aura and that feeling of history about it.
It does, but I think even more than that, I had Jack Clement there with me, and he's a magic guy. And so I don't know if it had been so magic, but I just know that I recorded, and Joe Ely was there. I mean, it probably would have been magic anyway. But you know, to be at Sun Studios with Jack Clement, and the night before when we arrived, we went back there and we sat on the back porch, and Jack was telling us all about Sun and telling us stories from there and showing us a long building. He said, "Now you see that building? That's where they kept the returns. And the returns the building was twice as big as the studio, you know." And I think I learned a lot, and you know, and that I've thought back on about being in the record business that night. But also, it was just fun. I remember it really, you know, a moment that stands out was when I recorded with Joe Ely. I realized how much our voices were working together because we grew up in the same area. We both grew up in Lubbock, and I was dancing in the control room with Jack Clement. I was very lucky. It was a very fortunate moment in time for me to be at Sun Studios with Jack Clement and Joe Ely and all my friends and be making a record. So what's not to love about it,
Yeah. There's quite an impressive list of people that have covered your songs over the years. Any personal favourites?
Well, of course, I love anything that Willie ever did. Especially I like my version of "Love Me Like a Song" with Willie a lot.
Mm-hmm.
That's one I revisit often, and I really love the song Peter Frampton did that we wrote together. And he actually used a recording that we did on the day we wrote it that was written for his little girl named Kimmie Rhodes. And I don't know. I love I tell you what I love right now. Probably my favorite of all is I wrote a song with Emmylou Harris called "Love and Happiness" for You.
Yeah.
And it's out on the new duet album that she and Martin Knopfler have, and it's just stunningly beautiful the way they've done the song. So I don't know, maybe that's my favorite right now. It certainly is right now.
It's not just a number of artists, it's also a diverse range of artists that have covered your material too. It must be pleasing as a songwriter to see your songs go out in so many different musical fields.
Well, it is, and it goes back to what I was telling you earlier. I've never been, I don't think I would be happy to just write one kind of music and just go, okay, I like Americana music and I only like Americana music, or I like pop music and I only like pop music. I love all music. I believe that what Louis Armstrong said is right. There's only two kinds of songs, good and bad. and so, it just, when you write songs, I heard Paul McCartney say one time that they asked him what his favorite song was, and he said he wouldn't want to say because he didn't want to hurt the other children's feelings, because your songs are like your children, and you care about them, and you spend a lot of time writing them, and then pretty soon you have far more than you're ever going to be able to have, you or anybody else is going to have anything to do with, and so it's happy that you can cross genres like that if you've crossed genres with your songwriting, because the songs get a life, and so you didn't just waste your time.
Are there certain elements that determine for you when is a good time to sit down and write? Do you have to be in a certain frame of mind to be able to sit down and write?
No, I can sit down anytime, and whatever's going to happen is going to happen. There are certainly times when you feel that, okay, I got to sit down and write that right now, but those times are kind of few and far between for me, because if I felt like that, I probably would have only written about 50 songs in my entire life.
Yeah.
But I don't have to drink whiskey and be bleeding and stuff to write a song. I can sit down anytime. I could go, okay, at 2:00 today, I'm going to sit down, and I think most writers, not just of songs but of books, most professional writers will tell you that you just make a space for it.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter how emotional you are or what you're doing. If you don't sit down and or at least turn your attention to the actual process of getting it on a piece of paper, then it's probably not going to happen. And I know, Bud Shrake, one of the novelists I admire the most, that's from Austin here, really great writer of novels, told me one time, I said, so what do you do? When do you write? And he said, I sit down at 6:00 every morning. Whether I write or not, I sit there. And that's how it is. Sometimes you write, and sometimes you sit down and it's just the channels are open, and you just, I accidentally wrote a play that way one time. I sat down to write a song, and I wrote a play and 13 songs, but then sometimes you sit down and it's just not happening, and so you just get up and do something else, but you gave it a chance. But for the most part, I write little snippets and collect ideas and things. I have to get out and live before I have anything to really say.
Yeah.
So I think it's all part of the process for me. I just spent 5 weeks in Europe, and I got, greatly inspired by a lot of different things that will come into play. That'll all be in the toolbox when I actually want to sit down and write.
Is there a golden rule for songwriting that you always try to follow?
Well, yeah, write from the heart instead
From the heart.
of from the brain.
Uh-huh.
If you only did that, then you'd be fine. It's when you get really mental that I think that you don't get your magic stuff. And actually, it's harder when you're thinking too much than it is when you're just allowing yourself to be part of it.
You've recorded quite a few duets over the years. That's obviously an enjoyable experience for you. Can it be a learning experience sometimes, being with other performers in the studio and seeing how they use the studio environment?
Oh, I think probably in the beginning it might have been, but most of the people I know have their own really definite quirks about them, and no two people are, it's not common for two people to feel exactly the same about recording. If they did get in the studio, they'd be going, me too, I feel that same way. But I've always kind of had my own quirks, and I think actually probably interestingly the person that's closest to the way I feel about recording, and I didn't learn it from him, we just happen to feel the same about it, is Willie.
Uh-huh.
Because we just like to be in the room with the people we record with or without headphones, but without is great, and just in a situation that feels like people playing music.
Mm-hmm.
And some people really, really, really want headphones and want them a certain way and are used to hearing themselves in headphones. So you get all sorts of different ways, and it really doesn't matter. I mean, no one way is right or wrong. What really is right is what makes the artist feel comfortable and what makes the artist sing in such a way that you get a true vocal when you listen to it on the playback. So whatever makes it work for the artist is what we like to do.
Now, you mentioned you've just returned from Europe. Where are your best markets outside of the States?
Oh, it ebbs and flows, but Europe has always been a better market for the singer-songwriters of America. And ironically, outside of America has always been the best market for most of the singer-songwriters of America because it's more of American music tends to be more of a packaged commercial product that's fed to the public, and so people have to really do their homework to go for the other stuff, and most people in America are moving pretty fast and going to their job and just trying to live, and they don't tend to focus on music as a hobby as much as they do entertainment. But people in Europe really, especially in Ireland, I've been touring Ireland a lot because I did a record with I wrote some songs and did a record with a well-known Irish singer-songwriter, Kieran Goss.
Yeah.
And I just went in support of a lot of his shows that he did and had a duet on his record that was getting good radio play. So I kind of decided to strike while the iron was hot and go over there and do some touring. And we've been having great shows over there and in Holland and Germany recently, and we're going to England in the fall. And the thing about it is if you're a songwriter, people over there really, it's more like it used to be back in the 60s and 70s here, when people really focused on the song and the words, and it's more about words and music there and less about what's hip and cool, and people learn the songs and they request the songs. I was stunned at my first show in Ireland in 15 years. People were screaming out, I would thought the show was almost over and people started screaming out the titles to songs that I almost didn't even know anymore. It's been so long since I have people coming to shows that have collected every record I've ever done and really know the songs and are asking me, when you wrote that line, what were you thinking? And I mean, it's a willingness to, they collect songs like Americans collect, I don't know, whatever we collect.
Yeah.
But they love songs there, and we're song people, so that's what a lot of the people that you could name American singer-songwriters, Nancy Griffith and Guy Clark and Townsend Van Zandt and Joe Ely, and a lot of us have had a lot more success with with things over there just because of that, I think.
Now, your writing is not just confined to songs. You've mentioned already you've written for the stage, and there's also a book in your writing credits. Tell us about that.
Oh, I really didn't mean to write that book. I was just sitting one day. I kind of set up this little area underneath an arbor where I would go and sit and just, think or try not to think too much. It just rest my brain for a while because I was doing a lot of traveling and writing and stuff at the time. And so I was sitting there, and this whole idea started coming to me, and I know it very well when it's happening. And I just went, no, go somewhere else. I am not going to write you. I'm not going to write a book because then you got to have a publisher. Writing the book didn't intimidate me. It was what you have to do once you have a book that I didn't, and it intimidates maybe not the right word. It's just it made me tired to even think about it. But the next thing I know, an hour later, I'm on page 7, and it was just an idea that was coming too strong, so I started writing it down, and I couldn't resist the temptation. And on I think like 7 or 9, it turned into a cookbook, and it's just a very stream of consciousness thing called The Amazing Afterlife of Zimmerman Fees, which before that moment I had never even thought of the name Zimmerman Fees. I don't even know where it came from, but I just started writing. I just decided that I'd just do it for myself for fun.
Yeah. And
so I just wrote anything and everything I wanted to. And strangely, though, we're cooks. My husband especially, he's a food writer for a magazine in New York, and we love food, and we both cook and do things. And so our family and friends had always asked for all our recipes. They wanted it for Christmas. And so I went in and I told Joe Gracie, I said, well, it just turned into a cookbook, so now you're involved. And I mean, he didn't even know. I just went in and said, see, I started writing this book, and I'm on page 9, and now it's a cookbook, and you have to help. So we just turned it into a cookbook. It's a metaphysical novel and cookbook. and we just decided to publish it ourselves and give it to our family and friends for a Christmas present. But the first Christmas, we sold out the first pressing and repressed it, and it just opened all sorts of doors. And now we're working on another cookbook, and I've also written a book of haiku poetry that I've never published, and it's just all stuff. I mean, you start writing, and then you have to figure out what it is. Is it a song? Is it a movie? Is it a play? Is it a book? It's just all stuff you write down.
So it doesn't become apparent until you're well into it.
Well, I usually know if it's a song.
Yeah.
But I said, I started to write a song, and it just turned into this whole play. So it all kind of runs together sometimes. I wasn't sure what the play was. I didn't know if it was a book or a movie or whatever, but I with time, I figured out it was a play.
Now, you recently released a compilation album spanning 10 years of work. What input did you have into the song selection there?
All of it.
All of it?
I picked them all. It was me. We have our own record company, and for the purpose of releasing my records. And so pretty much, I was going to be going to Ireland. It was kind of time to catch up. I had released, I have a compilation of my first 3 records called Jackalopes, Moons, and Angels.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was kind of just time to do some catching up and moving on. And I needed to go back to Ireland, not knowing that the people there already knew my music much better than I realized. I decided I'd put together a compilation before I toured over there about a year or so ago, and I put that together, and I called it 10 Summers because 10 years had gone by, and it was summer, and I was, sitting on the front porch and decided I'd, put the concept together and write the liner notes to it, and then it just turned out, I'm sitting on my porch, it's summer, and, it's been 10 summers, and I was just reflecting back, because the compilations cause you to do that. You're listening to music you were making, you're thinking about the people. It's kind of a nostalgic thing if you really put your own compilation together. You're listening to songs and thinking, oh, yeah, that was a fun day, and we did this, and somebody said that, and maybe you think about a joke somebody told, or maybe somebody's not even alive anymore. There were a lot of somebodies who weren't alive anymore, and so you're reflecting and you're thinking about that, and so I just decided to call it 10 Summers and take a couple of songs from each of the records.
Was there a criteria you used in choosing the songs?
Oh, let's see. I would say that I picked, maybe, it's hard to say your favorite, but I tried to put together a kind of a logical sequence of some of the ones that had kind of risen to the top, either ones that I thought that I liked the best or ones that I thought that people would want to have on a compilation. Because, a compilation, I mean, for a lot of people, it's just the same songs again. And they've already got them on records, but what you're doing is you're putting together what you think are going to be some of the favorites into a collection that people don't have to go find, 8 different CDs to play their favorite songs.
Yeah.
Just the ones that kind of had risen to the top, I guess, or the ones that just kind of marked definitive moments in time for me.
Mm-hmm. Now, your son's making quite a name for himself in music as well, as a musician, and a bit of production work too. That must be wonderful for you to see that happening.
It's wonderful for me to see that happening, and to his credit, the reason that's happening is because he's worked so hard.
Yeah.
And because he's completely, I mean, when you have a family and you've decided that you're going to make a living in music, you have to stay pretty busy when you're a guy like him, and so I'm really proud of him because he's very determined and his heart's in the right place. I mean, I'm talking to you from a studio he built.
Yeah.
And with his bare hands. I mean, as a teenage boy, he started building this studio for me and with me back here, and it's where we make all our records. And I mean, his stuff's just scattered all over the place right now from 5 or 6 different projects he's working on. And I think I'm really proud of what a good musician he is. He practices probably more than any other musician I've ever known.
Mm-hmm.
But he also I'm just really proud of him because I know what it takes to make a living and take good care of your family as a musician and a producer. And he's done some wonderful things for different people, and I'm just really happy to see him succeed.
It's fantastic.
It's hard.
Is there a certain type of record that you haven't explored yet that you'd like to do soon?
I'm thinking about that right now. It kind of comes to me here and there. Right now, we're working on some music that I've been trying to get out for a long time. Some of it I recorded. A few of the tracks were recorded back in the same sessions when I was doing West Texas Heaven, and they're part of a play called Small Town Girl, which we've done a workshop for, but it's going to be in production in September. And we're going to release a record called Small Town Girl that, we're putting all that together now.
Uh-huh.
And so I'm working on that. It's kind of neat. It's real earthy, but it's also real kind of trippy. It takes place on 2 levels, West Texas Heaven and West Texas. So it kind of, the musically, it kind of, lyrically, it kind of toggles between heaven and earth, and that's kind of neat.
Yeah.
We're doing that, and I'm thinking about what my next record's going to be, and it's hard to say, when you start envisioning a record that you've just barely begun. I've recorded a few songs for it. It's sort of like you just see this little window coming into view in the corner of the room, and you're just trying to get that window to move down into the wall so you can see out of it. So it's hard to say exactly what it looks like yet, and it's almost not even good to talk too much about what it looks like because it causes you to define it in ways that you don't really want to. I just kind of like to take it a song and a note at a time. There's some records that when we did Love Me Like a Song, that was sort of a musical production collaboration between Gabe and me, and I was playing European cafe music and some of that kind of more old style Parisian music and stuff for him, but I also wanted something with a more pop feel to it, but that combined some of those musical elements.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'd play different things for him. I was just collecting up all these different, everything from Swiss National Circus music to Edith Piaf, and playing different songs and things for Gabe, and we were talking about it, and he actually built some of the instruments that we used on that record because they weren't available. And like an harmonica, for example, is probably a $20,000 instrument. We took an old piano bench and glued some wine glasses on it and made our own harmonica because I read a thing. I saw a documentary about Benjamin Franklin and how he had invented the harmonica, which is where you run your finger around the top of a wine glass and go.
Yeah.
And you can do that if you do that right. You can make chords with it and stuff. And they said that they became popular instruments, and then doctors tell people to stop playing them because people were losing their minds. And so we said, well, we have got to have one of those. So that song, I think, probably more than any, we envisioned before we began.
Yeah.
The direction we were going to send it musically, but most of them are just real song driven, and they kind of come together on their own.
Sounds great. Kimmie, thank you so much for your time this morning.
Well, thank you.
Especially so soon after a busy trip to Europe.
Well, I'm going to Mexico at the end of the month, and I'm going to do nothing.
Good for
a
you.
month. And then I'm going to go to San Francisco and see Emmylou and Martin Knopfler sing our song.
Oh, excellent. That will be great.
Thank you. Thanks for your interest, and thanks for playing my music.
Oh, thank you.
Is there anything we can send you, or that you don't have, or?
I might get back to you on that. Yeah, I'll check. I'd like to make this.
Send me an email. Let me know what you got, and I'll send you what you don't have.
Terrific, Kimmie. I'm sure you were an excellent florist, but we're glad that you didn't stick with it.
I still am. I still do flowers.
I do.
You have to keep your chops up, It's funny because I think Johnny Gimble was a barber, and he always kept his barber's license. I think it was Johnny Gimble, and there are different people have done different things, but I've never quit loving flowers as much as I did, and so I still do weddings for friends and their kids. And I've saved a lot of people a lot of money by knowing how to be a florist.
Tremendous. Kimmie, thanks again. Take care.
Thank you.
And we'll be in touch.
Thanks, John. Bye-bye.
All the best. Bye-bye.
Bye.